Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and thank you for listening to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode this week. This week, my guest is Betsy Hoffman. She runs the Etsy shop Pretty Girl Postcards. They are hilarious, I'll tell you right now. I'm so glad to have her on the podcast. We're going to be talking about her Etsy story, how she got started, what she's doing, and lots more. So, Betsy, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. So before we jump in, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've done a lot of things in my life in terms of being creative. So let's see. I've tried calligraphy. I did calligraphy for a while, and quilting. And I acted in community theater, and a few years ago, I wrote a book called Dreaming of Sicily. It's a travel memoir.
Wow.
Of my first. It was my husband and my first trip to Sicily to visit the hometown of my grandparents.
Oh, wow. Do you still have family in Sicily? Were you able to track them down?
Yes, amazingly enough, I was. I met my grandfather's youngest sister. The last time he saw her was when she was 6 years old in 1912. And then he came to America. He never saw her again. But then I came in 1996 and I met her. She was 92.
Oh, wow.
And she looked exactly like our family. Wow. As soon as I saw her, I knew that we were related. Oh, and she said, all these years I think about my brother, and now his granddaughters come to see me, and I'm so happy.
Oh, did they keep in touch? Were they able to stay in touch over the years?
Well, unfortunately, she passed away not too long after that. But I do keep in touch with some of the people that I did meet there that helped me to find my family.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so the book is titled Dreaming of Sicily. It's available on Amazon. I'm going to link to it in the show notes for this episode. If you want to go and check it out, please do. There's also a Kindle version as well. So if you don't read physical books anymore, you can still enjoy it electronically. And yes. So Betsy, so you did calligraphy, you did quilting, and now you have an Etsy shop selling postcards.
Right.
What's the story about that?
Well, I started out selling refrigerator magnets. Oh. I had a hobby of collecting old postcards, 100 years old, like from the early part of the 1900s. Mm-hmm. It was called the Golden Age of Postcards. And there are some beautiful illustrations. There were fabulous artists back then. Mm. And I started collecting those, and I ended up with like 5,000 of them.
Whoa.
And so I picked out my favorites, and I turned them into refrigerator magnets. And I made them myself. I did print those ones myself. And I put them on magnets, but cutting the magnets was hard. Mm-hmm. It was hard on my hands. And so I kind of had to stop doing that because arthritis and all that. Mm-hmm. So then what happened was we came upon Pretty Girl Postcards quite as a lark. I was showing my sister Carmela a book that I had just bought about 18th century fashions. I've always been kind of enamored with the whole Marie Antoinette type thing with the high hair and everything. Right. And so I was showing her this book, and there was a fashion plates. Fashion plates were kind of like catalogs. We have catalogs today, but back then they didn't have catalogs. The dressmaker would hire an artist to come in, and they would make up a certain dress and have it on a model, and then the artist would sketch it. And so when people came into the dress shop, upper class people, I guess, came into the dress shop, they could look at the illustrations and say, oh, I want that dress. Mm. And then they would make it up for them. But these were called fashion plates, and it was popular in the late 1700s. And that's where these pictures for Pretty Girl postcards come from. But my sister and I were looking through this book, and there was one picture, especially it showed a woman really decked out to the nines, and she had on this red dress that went out all the way out, and high hair, really high hair, and spectacularly baubled. It was a red dress with green baubles and green lace, and it just was over the top. And my sister said, as if she was speaking for the woman, she said, "You mean we have to decorate the tree too?" and I fell on the floor laughing. And then when we stopped laughing, we looked at each other and said, "Hey, this is a good idea." And so we started going through the book and looking at more of these pretty ladies, and started making up 21st century type quips for them to say. So they look like they're in the 1700s, but their brains are in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yes, and that's what makes them so hilarious is the characters really don't match what they're saying, and that's why, they're so unique and so funny.
That's what we tried to do.
Yeah. Very nice. So then did you just go through the whole book and come up with different statements for each of the ladies in the pictures, or over time did things come up and then you thought, oh, okay, this statement would match this picture?
Sometimes we did go through the book and we found a lot of sayings. We would make up a lot of sayings that that the woman would say, and then a lot of times we'll find a saying and we go looking for the picture. And we found a lot of the pictures through research. We had to go, I live near Washington, D.C., and so we were able to go to the Library of Congress and look at their huge selection. And we were able to get copies of the fashion plates from there. And then from then we would look at them and figure out what they were saying. And luckily, when the artist who painted these back 200 and some years ago painted them, they always had them in some kind of a position. They weren't just standing there. They were always doing something. Yeah. And so it's very easy to figure out what they were doing and add a quip to it.
Yeah.
Like there's one, the woman is dressed out all in a beautiful gown and a big hat and big hair. And she has what looks like a looking glass, and she's looking up at the sky. Mm-hmm. And what she's saying, what we put down for her to say is, "I don't get it. If they can put one man on the moon, why not all of them?"
Yes, like that. And there's one I like where the lady is I guess they're showing the back of the dress and her hair and everything. It's just over the top. And she says, "Never, ever look back."
Oh, yes. Yes, I like that one. Yeah. They never, ever look back.
Yes.
She's on her way out. She's going.
Yeah, she's going.
And then there's another one of showing the back that says, "I am so out of here." We like that one too.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, everyone is funny. Everyone, has a character. And I love that about it. And that's what makes it unique. And I think that's one of the things that helps, and especially for new sellers coming onto the market, when you think you're entering into a category that seems saturated or that there's competition, think about how you can make what you're making different enough and unique enough to attract just the right seller for your products. Like, I assume not everybody will get the humor in your cards, but for the people who do, I can see people buying multiples to either send to someone that they know that particular card would be appropriate for, or to use as home decor, like hang it somewhere, in the house.
I also have a line of Jane Austen quotes postcards, and they are quotes from Jane Austen's different different novels, and actually some of her letters that she wrote to her sister Cassandra. And some of them are very funny, and some of them are poignant and loving.
Mm-hmm.
And one woman said that she bought a bunch of them, but she took three of her favorites, and framed them and put them in her powder room. And she said it just sets off the room so pretty.
Yeah.
And she sent me a beautiful picture of it, and it was just such a great idea, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know how, a particular card is going to speak to someone and what ideas they have for it, just put it out there and people's imaginations run wild with them.
Well, everyone tells me I have such a sense of humor. And
Mm-hmm.
so whenever I'm, talking to them or saying something and I say something funny, they go, you should write that down, or you should write a book or something. So I always try to make it funny.
And you're doing it. So, Betsy, how do you describe yourself? Are you more of a crafter then, since making these cards, or do you consider yourself more of an artist, a maker, or, just a business comedian?
Yeah, well, I'm a comedian for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess I would consider myself a graphic artist. But like I said, I've been into many things in my life, like calligraphy and quilting. I tried for a while. I acted in community theater, and then I wrote a book called Dreaming of Sicily.
Yeah.
And as I said, about searching for my paternal grandparents. And mainly what I consider myself is the creator of pretty stuff.
Okay. I like that. So let's talk about getting on Etsy. So you and is it Carmela or Carmela? You said
Carmela.
Carmela. Okay.
It's a different pronunciation of Carmela, which was my grandmother's name.
I see. So how did you first discover Etsy, and when?
Well, I think it was around 2010, and it was mainly crafters back then.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of crafters, and that's when I had the idea for refrigerator magnets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took my collection of 5,000 old postcards, and I made pictures of them and sold them as refrigerator magnets. But then as time went on, and cutting the hard magnet to make it fit with the picture and everything was very hard on my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right around that time that my sister and I fell over Pretty Girl postcards, and then that was born, and so we've been selling those ever since.
Okay. And so you started the shop with your sister. Are you both still running the shop together?
Well, it's a little harder now. Before, she lived nearby, and we'd see each other all the time, and we would get together and brainstorm. But last September, she moved to North Carolina. So we don't see each other as much anymore, but we still collaborate on different things. And whenever I get in a rut, I'll give her a call and say, help me out here. And we'll brainstorm some things over the phone. And we do talk almost every day.
Yeah.
And, mainly we're still sisters.
Yeah. So when you opened the Etsy shop, originally, what was your goal? What was the intention? Was it just to have a creative outlet and then maybe make some money through it, or?
Well, cash. That was pretty much.
Very simple, cash.
Well, really, I wanted to spread the Pretty Girl funniness around.
Mm-hmm.
I knew they were funny, and I thought other people would think they're funny, and I like to bring beauty into the world.
Yeah.
So that was my little way of doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's pretty much what motivates me. It's just the Pretty Girls themselves are enough to motivate me. I look at them and I can just imagine what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like the one was I'm with the band. I looked at her, and that's the first thing that just came into my mind. was, I'm with the band,
Yeah.
like a groupie. And she was like a 17th century groupie. And it just hit my funny bone. And I hoped that it would hit other people the
Yes.
same way.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that the market for this is out there, and when they find it, when they find you, you'll know it. Do you remember how soon after you started selling the postcards that you got your first sale?
It was right away,
Mm.
because I had the magnets. I had been selling the magnets before that. I
Okay.
sent out an email and I said, I'm no longer selling magnets, but I am selling these pretty girl postcards. And
Mm.
so a lot of my customers just came right over.
Okay.
And so I just made sales one after another right away. And that was very encouraging for me.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You said you sent out an email to your mailing list. So obviously there are people who have signed up to hear from you.
Right.
So that
Well, actually, it
helps.
wasn't. I guess I did it backwards. It was just the people who had bought from me.
Okay.
I sent them an email. I
Okay.
don't know if that's legal or not, but uh,
But now do
that's
you
what I
have a
did.
mailing list?
And now I have a mailing
Okay,
list.
very good. All right. And I know we were talking about this a little bit before. Let's just revisit that. So how often do you communicate with your mailing list?
Um, about once a month.
Okay. All right.
I'll try once a month. I'm a little bit mindful. I'm afraid if I contact them too much, they'll get sick of me. But I think once a month might be okay.
Yes. And so this is a conversation that Betsy and I just touched on before we started the recording about when it's okay, or when is it okay to reach out to people on your mailing list, and when is it too much. And I think I have the same I have had the same reservations you do about not wanting to get in front of people too much, not wanting to annoy them with too many mailings. But one of the things that I have to remind myself of, and maybe this will help you or anyone else who has concerns about reaching out to their mailing list on a regular basis, is for mine, I use what's called a double opt-in, which means someone signs up to the mailing list, then the mailing list provider sends an email to them before putting them on the list saying, okay, I see that you signed up for this. Are you sure you really want to be on this list? So they have to confirm that they want to be on the list. It's called a double opt-in. So that way, you know for sure that people are intentionally signing up to your mailing list. And so for me, I have to remind myself that, okay, they said yes, they want to be on this list twice. So they do, which means they probably do want to hear from me. And so I think about that, and every time I send something out saying, okay,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah. So don't hesitate, and I guess I'm talking to myself as well in reaching out to your list. If you feel the need to more often than once a month, that should be fine. And one of the things I now appreciate is when people unsubscribe, because for me it just tells me they're no longer interested. So I don't want to bore anyone. So if someone is not interested and they want to unsubscribe, then that's good, because I pay for each person who is on my mailing list. So if someone is saving me money by leaving the list, that's a good thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about your business, and how is your shop doing? Is it profitable yet, or are you still building up to that?
Well, yes, it is profitable as far as customers. In the spring, it slows down a little bit. I
Mhm.
think because people want to be outside. They've been cooped up all winter, and they want to be outside, and they're not so much on their phones or on their computers.
Yeah.
And then it gets hot in the summer, and they're more inside. And so then I see an uptick in customers. And then in the fall, when it cools off a little, it goes down a little. But then right before Halloween, for the Christmas rush, it picks up again. So I have ebbs and flows, like
Mhm.
I think most businesses do.
Yes. Now, in particular for Christmas, do you find that the volume is highest then, or would you say summer is your highest selling volume?
I would say Christmas.
Okay.
I do have a line of Christmas postcards as well.
Okay.
And some are funny and some are just very sweet.
Okay.
Sweet and sassy, I call them. But but I do sell those around Christmas time.
Okay.
And they do very well.
All right. Now, so in anticipation of Christmas sales, do you tend to carry more inventory than usual, or do you keep your inventory levels the same and just gauge what the market does?
Well, I gauge what the market does really, but if I do see a lot of people buying one card, I will stock up more on that card.
Okay.
And because I have them printed, I don't print them myself. I have them professionally printed on 15-point cardstock with archival ink, and they also put on a UV coating that keeps them from fading.
Okay.
And so because I have a little bit of downtime, I'll have to put in an order beforehand.
Okay.
So I kind of have to always keep my eye on what's selling and what's not selling.
Okay. And for anyone who doesn't really understand those terms, can you describe what is 15 cardstock? That's 15-point cardstock is the weight of the paper that it's printed on.
Yes. And what it is very strong, hard paper. It's postcard strength, like you would buy when you go on vacation, maybe. It's a very it's the postcard stock that they use.
Okay.
And so it's a rigid card, and the inks are archival, which means that they don't fade, and they also put the UV coating over the inks to keep them from fading. And also this printer uses eco ink. You know, they do it ecologically
friendly.
I don't know what the right term is, but
right. They're eco-friendly inks.
Eco-friendly, right?
Right. Okay. And so, and then the back is such that people can actually mail these cards to someone else.
Yes, I wanted something French and pretty, and so I put in a beautiful script, carte postale, like you would see on a French postcard.
Yes.
Because these women are from French fashion plates.
Yeah.
So it says carte postale, and then at the bottom in very lighting, I have my website, which is www.prettygirlpostcards.com.
And that's great for marketing purposes too.
Right.
Now, do you ship internationally or do you only sell domestically?
Well, I do ship internationally. I don't have many customers, but I do have some. And I ship domestically for free. I have free shipping and anywhere in the United States. But I do have to charge for international shipping because it's really quite expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I have a scale and I weigh things, and then I also have a friend at the post office who helps me to determine how much it's going to be. Okay. So that's helpful.
Yeah. And one of the upsides about selling postcards and magnets and things that are light is that even though international shipping can be pricey, what you sell is on the lighter side. So it doesn't get as pricey as some can.
Exactly. I mean, if you have a very large item or awkward type item, you have to put it in a box. I've done that before too. I used to sell Italian ceramics, and that's a very time intensive thing because you have to make sure it's wrapped exceedingly well.
Yeah.
And so I understand that end of it too.
So let's talk about pricing now. How do you determine how much you're going to charge for your postcards or the magnets? Because I see you still carry magnets too.
Well, the magnets that I carry now are printed, by this same printer. So I don't print them myself like I did with the other magnets.
Okay.
But anyway, they're printed and they're very nice. And they're big. They're 4x6.
Oh, that's big. Yeah. I was thinking of the small buttons, but these are like postcard size magnets.
They're postcard because my sister and I talked about it. She said, "Oh, yes, they're so fabulous. You have to make them big so people can see them."
Yeah.
But as far as pricing goes, that can be tricky.
Yeah.
And what I do is I factor in the cost of the postcard, the miscellaneous costs, as I will ship my postcards inside a clear cellophane sleeve to protect them. And I hear feedback from people all the time that say that they really appreciate that, because when they receive it, nice and crisp corners, nothing, it's not at all damaged. Yeah. So I use these cellophane wrappers, which also cost. Yeah. And so you have to figure in everything. And then I believe that wholesale and retail is you take your price and then you double it.
Okay.
I suppose that's the key. Anyway, that's what I try to do.
Now, these cellophane sleeves that you ship them in, are they rigid so they add some weight to it, or are they the flexible kind and just more for protection?
They're flexible,
okay.
But they're nice and thick. I mean, they really protect the cards, but they are flexible. So it really just adds another layer of protection, because I mail them usually I mail them in envelopes, just in an envelope.
Okay.
And I just didn't want to stick them in an envelope.
Yeah.
Because who knows what could happen. So I put them in the sleeve so that even if something happens to the envelope where it gets torn or something, that they'll still be protected by the cellophane sleeve.
Yes. I do the same thing too. I sell old patterns for sewing and things like that. And I put them in a plastic sleeve as well, and just in case, because you're right, you never know if it's snowing or it's raining and the envelope drops, at least there's the plastic in between the envelope and the product, so it doesn't affect it.
Yes, I agree.
You've been on Etsy as a seller since 2012. In that time, have you ever had to deal with any negative feedback or any disputes with a buyer?
Well, I've been very lucky, and I haven't had even one bad feed mark.
Oh,
so
great.
I really haven't had to deal with that problem. But I will say that you've got to be accommodating to your customer. As soon as you get the order, you get it ready and you ship it as soon as possible. If not that day, the next day. And you send them a note that says, and Etsy makes this easy for you, because they have a pre-printed little email, a convo that you can send them that says, I mailed your postcard out on this date, and so you should be receiving it soon.
Yeah.
And so I send them that right away. And I find that they really like that, because you keep them in the loop the whole way.
Yeah. And you're right. Etsy does make it easy to do that. If you populate your message to buyers, as soon as they check out, they get whatever you say in that message. And then when you're doing the shipping, again, you can say, oh, it's mailed, it's on its way, here is and I think if you use Etsy's shipping, Etsy will also include the tracking number, so then they can track it too. And
exactly.
And
that's just good business, I think.
Yes.
I remember my dad told me one time, you could be mediocre at whatever you do, but if you're accommodating, the people will love you. And he always stressed that you have to be accommodating to your customers. So I kind of was raised with that ingrained in my head.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking about that now. That does make sense. You can be mediocre, but yes, if you're accommodating and you're willing to bend to fit with somebody else's schedule or agenda within reason. Yeah,
Right.
I think that does make a big difference. So Betsy, let's talk now about how you promote your Etsy shop, how you get people into your store and excited about your products. What do you do? Do you use social media? You actually do have a website too. And I know
I do
you
have a
already
website.
mentioned that. But yes,
Yes,
so what do you do?
it's a standalone website, prettygirlpostcards.com,
Mhm.
and I get most of my sales through that. It is the website that
Really?
is provided with Etsy. I made it's called Pattern. It's called the Pattern
Yes.
thing, and
Yes. Hmm.
you make it up yourself. But because I had the domain name prettygirlpostcards.com,
Hmm.
I was able to use that as the name of the. Whereas on the Etsy shop, if someone wanted to get to you, they'd have to do uh,
Etsy.com
Etsy.com/Pretty
slash.
Girl Postcards.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have your own website, if you have your own domain, you can do like prettygirlpostcards.com. It makes it a lot easier to remember. And so I do get most of my sales through that. And it's called The Pattern, and it's through Etsy. And they
Okay.
made it very easy to set up a beautiful website.
So tell
And
me how that works for you, because do you do your listings on Etsy and then do they automatically get imported into prettygirlpostcards.com, or is there a
yes,
manual process? Okay, it's an
yep,
automatic thing.
right. I do it on the Etsy site.
Mm-hmm.
I list all of my items on the Etsy site,
Mm-hmm.
and it populates it on the Pattern site. So if I,
Mm-hmm.
add 10 of them on the Etsy site, then they're right there on the Pattern site,
Okay.
uh, right at the same time that I hit publish.
Okay. And so do you do any specific marketing for prettygirlpostcards.com? Is that why you think you make more sales through that? Or do
I
you think
have
people are just fine? You have. Okay.
now I use the Etsy promoted items,
Mm-hmm.
and I find that works pretty good. And I think most of my sales come from that.
Okay.
Uh, I've tried the Google Shopping that they give you through Etsy,
Yeah.
but
How
I've
did
not
that
had
work?
much luck with that.
Okay.
And I tried Twitter and Facebook, but uh, I found that they weren't as doing very well either. So I tried Pinterest, but I didn't get very far because I wasn't doing it right.
Yeah.
And then I heard I got a couple books on Pinterest, and they said the Pinterest is better because on Facebook your image will stay there for maybe 5 minutes. On Twitter, you have just a few seconds of viability. And with Pinterest, a pin lasts forever.
Yeah.
So after reading these books, I'm trying it again, and I think I'm on the right track, and I'm hoping that Pinterest will um, bring more sales my way. But as far as advertising, I mainly stick with the Etsy promoted items,
Okay.
and I do find that is a good promotion.
Okay. Okay, that's great to know. I think you're probably the first person that I have talked to in depth about just how the Pattern website integrates with your Etsy shop. Now, when people buy from your website, do they check out on Etsy or do they check out on your website? Does it
I believe
redirect them?
it's through Etsy.
Okay. And so then does a sale from your website count as a sale
Yes.
through your Etsy shop?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, it's
okay.
just as if it's your Etsy shop,
Okay.
but that's why it's really a good idea to have your website connected with your Etsy shop,
Mm.
because like I said, when you're listing, it just automatically lists it, and when they check out, you automatically get the tally,
Right.
the people who have bought, the number of sales, and the feedback. The feedback is on the Etsy site.
Okay.
They don't really show the feedback on the
On the
Pattern site.
Pattern site. Okay. So for anyone who wants to have their own website and you're not really technically inclined, or you don't want to spend the time to try and figure out all the technical aspects
Yes.
of it, Pattern might be a good solution for you because of the ease of just having that integration between that and your Etsy shop. If you're going to be selling the same things, that's a great idea, and time
Yes.
saver. And the advantage to having the website in addition to your Etsy shop is, like Betsy said, you can brand yourself a bit more. So you can tell people go to prettygirlpostcards.com as opposed to, okay, go to Etsy and then search for my shop.
Right.
People are more likely to go to Google and type in a URL or a business name like, Pretty Girl Postcards, and then find you easier
Right.
that way. So that it
Right.
makes sense.
So
Now, are you
it's been
able
a
to?
godsend. It's been really terrific for me as
Yeah,
far as the website, because I'm one of those people that aren't really technically inclined.
right.
And it makes it so easy. They have the themes, and you could just pick
Mhm.
out the theme that you want, and it
Yeah.
tells you the colors, and you pick out the colors, and they just do it for you. And it's like
Right.
magic.
Yeah. No, I can see it being a good time saver for some folks if that's just not where you want to be spending your time. My other question is, are you able to list products directly on Pattern? Let's say it's something that you're not selling or can't sell on Etsy. Are you able to list it on the Pattern website directly?
Um, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, so let's say you have a mug. I'm just giving an example.
Uh-huh.
And you want to sell that. Can you sell it on your prettygirlpostcards.com website direct? Like, are you able to put a listing on there directly without listing it first on Etsy?
No,
Okay.
no. Everything has to be done through Etsy.
Okay. All right.
Everything is listed right. You do it through Etsy, and it just repopulates it into the pattern site automatically.
Okay. And the reason I was asking that is for anyone who might be thinking maybe they sell on multiple platforms. Perhaps they sell on Etsy and on eBay. And maybe now that they have a website, or if they're considering getting a pattern website, I just wanted to know if there was a functionality to maybe sell other things that they sell elsewhere that might not be appropriate for the Etsy platform. And when I say appropriate, I mean, Etsy is
Right.
for vintage or handmade or what have you. But let's say they have something that they didn't make that they're able to sell on eBay, but they want to sell it on their website. So I was asking to see if it's possible to integrate other items.
Not within the pattern site alone. Everything
Okay.
that is listed on the pattern site has gone through the Etsy
Okay. And
store.
that makes sense. So now, in the time that you've been on Etsy, have you developed new relationships, maybe business contacts or friendships through just
Oh,
selling on Etsy?
I've gotten so many made so many online friends.
Yeah.
People will write to me all the time and say they're so funny, and I send it to my girlfriend, and she just cracked up, and she had to know where I got them. And other ones will tell me the story of the framing them and putting them up,
Yeah.
and then others will it just becomes a very fluid conversation that
Mhm.
between customers and myself, to where we become friends, online friends.
Yeah. That's nice. I can see that happening so easily.
Yes.
Do you belong to any teams where you regularly interact with people, or is it primarily just people who have come in contact with your products that you've been connecting with?
Well, mainly it's just people who I've come in contact that have purchased from me.
Okay.
I've tried Teams, but I guess I'm just not a joiner.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but for some reason I never was able to follow through on the
Yeah.
team. I mean, when you're on a team, you kind of have to participate all the time, and I would rather spend my time creating
Yeah.
or trying to figure out how to sell my items instead of just being on a team where, you're just saying
Working.
good work,
Yeah. Nope, that makes perfect sense. And speaking of spending your time creating, when you get a new idea for a new card or a new product that you want to sell, typically how long does it take from the time you get the idea to actually executing it, creating the design and then having it up and listed in your Etsy shop?
Well, I'm very lucky because I'm retired, so I'm pretty much home all the time with my dogs, and and when they're not taking my time, uh, I I think up things and I'm able to do them right away. And if I'm not near a computer where I can sketch out the idea, then I'll put it on a napkin or a scrap piece of paper. If I'm in a restaurant or anywhere, I'll just write it down and then I'll sketch it out as soon as I get home. And I'll give you an example of one funny thing that happened. One night I was sleeping and I woke up out of a sound sleep and I had this terrific idea for a card. And so I ran downstairs, I got my laptop and I went back to bed and I did it in bed. And I found the perfect woman, and the saying said, "I'm looking for a social network for people like me who just want to be left alone." and and I designed it and everything. It was beautiful, and I managed to save it. I think I did it in a dream state. I don't even remember doing it. I woke up and I didn't remember that I'd done anything. I didn't know until I turned on my computer and I saw it. And I said, "Wow, I did that." And then it hit me that I did it in the middle of the night while I was while I was sleeping.
Wow.
So sometimes I just get hit with inspiration anytime. And when I do, I run to
You
the
run
computer.
with it, apparently.
Right. I go right for it.
That's great. Okay, so you did the design, and then do you immediately go ahead and get the postcards made up and then just keep an inventory of them, or do you do a prototype and just put it up for sale and see if there's any interest first?
Well, I suppose that I have dreams of grandeur. So so I so I go ahead and I have them made up. And the printer that I use, you have to buy at least 25. And so I start out with 25. So I've got 25 postcards sitting here and hoping that they will sell.
Yeah. Okay.
So
And
I do keep an inventory.
okay. And do you have to do 25 of each design or 25 altogether so that
No, 25 of each design.
okay. That makes sense. So then how do you manage your inventory? Etsy now has this inventory management system that you can use, which, it's supposed to help you keep track of how many units you have so that you don't run out of products if someone orders. Are you taking advantage of Etsy's new inventory management system?
Well, no.
Okay.
I'm very low tech.
Okay.
I have baskets and I keep my postcards alphabetized in baskets. And I can just, by glancing, I can see how many there are in each design.
Yeah.
And I'll go through those and decide if I need to order or not. But I also keep an eye on, when I'm selling, which one is really selling a lot. And so I'll know that I need to add to it.
Okay.
But mainly I just do it by eyeballing it.
Okay.
I don't have the kind of inventory that is different sizes and things like that. Like if
Yeah.
you're selling T-shirts and you have to have a small, medium, large.
Yes.
I don't have that. So it's a lot easier for me.
Right. You're right. And I think that is the type of seller that actually will work better for. I don't use the inventory management system because, like you, what I sell just doesn't lend itself to needing that type of um, tracking.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Now, this next question, I almost feel like you're not really going to have an answer based on the story you just told of waking up in the middle of the night and coming up with a new design. But just in case, do you ever get into creative ruts? And if you do, how do you get yourself out?
Well, I do. Some days I'll go for several days and I won't have thought of anything. And then I go back to my books and my illustrations, and I'll look at them and I'll see if they're saying anything to me. I know it sounds funny, but
I get it. I get it.
my pretty girls really do talk to me. I love my pretty girls. And if I can't come up with anything, I'll call my sister and we'll talk and we'll bounce some ideas off of each other. And if that doesn't work, then I just let it go. I put it out of my mind and do something like laundry. and then I wait for it to come back. And usually it does. And if it doesn't, I just sit in a chair and as a writer, there was a saying, seat of your pants to the seat of the chair is what works. And so you just sit down and you say, okay, and maybe it's great, maybe it's not so great, but at least you're doing something.
Yeah.
At least you're creating something.
Yeah.
And it keeps you on the track.
So is your goal to try and create a new card or something new every single day?
Not every day. I would try to maybe do 2 or 3 a week.
Okay.
And sometimes I do more. Sometimes I'll do 6 or 8. And sometimes I'll do 2 or 3. But I always try to end the week by having at least 2 or 3 that I've done.
Okay, that makes sense. So at least there's always new inventory and new cards coming in.
Right.
Or coming up for sale. Now, Betsy, is there a lesson about selling on Etsy that you think you learned the hard way in doing all this?
Yes. I learned the hard way that selling is really hard. And selling on the internet is really, really hard. Because no matter how good your product is, if people can't find you, then you're not going to have success. You're not going to sell anything. So you have to keep up. You have to try things like I did with Twitter and Facebook and every other thing that comes up. I mean, there's so many now, Instagram, chat, and Tumblr, and you can't keep up with all of them. But find one that really works for you and stick with it. But I do find, and it is a challenge, to sell on the internet. And I really had not realized that before I started.
Yeah. So
I mean, you have to really want it, and you have to go after it. And like I said, if it doesn't matter how wonderful your product is, if it's not getting out there, if people aren't seeing it, they won't purchase it.
That's
so
true.
You have to work all the time at sales, which for a creative person is a very hard thing to do.
Yes.
I know, because I'm a creative person and I am definitely not into the business end, but you have to learn the business end to be able to be successful.
Yeah. And you're so right. I think maybe there was a time way back when selling online was easier, when it wasn't as saturated, when everyone wasn't spending their time online. Now I almost think sometimes it might be easier to sell products face to face, like, physically than on the internet. But you're right. And so trying different things. I know that you've tried social media. And then of course now you have the website. Which of those, or what particular strategy do you think has been the most worth the time that you put into it? So is it devoting time to tweaking ads for promoted listings so that you get more people to your Etsy shop or your website? or is it spending time on social media, either Facebook or Postcard? Of those that you've tried, which one have you found to be most effective for what you're doing?
Well, I recently found, and actually it was because of one of your podcasts, I tried out this thing called Marmalade,
Yeah.
and they help you with your tags.
Yes.
And one thing I didn't realize, that I really had lousy tags. I was thinking in terms of myself and how I would describe it, but I wasn't thinking outside the box. And that made me understand that there are all different ways to describe something. And I was able to change all of my tags and move up in the ratings, at least on Marmalade.
Yeah.
And hopefully on Etsy, I think it's brought more customers my way because my tags are a little bit tighter.
Yep, that is one good way to get traffic in is really mastering Etsy search, and that relates to the tags that you use, the titles, where you put your words, all that. So I'm glad to hear that you found the tool really helpful. I know lots of people do as well, because Etsy's search relies so much on.
I think Marmalade is a good thing.
Okay, great. So shout out to the guys at Marmalade for that one. Now, Betsy, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Well, probably through my website. There is at the bottom of the page, it says contact, and you can contact me at my email, and a pre-populated page comes up that says that they will send me an email, and you can write to me and tell me whatever you want, or you can send me a convo through the Etsy site. Okay. So either through my website or through the Etsy site, you can get in touch with me.
Okay.
Or if you can reach me at Betsy Hoffman at hotmail.com. That's also one of my things. But mainly when it comes to the pretty girls, you can go through the website or through the Etsy convo area.
Okay. And I will have links to all these different ways that you can reach Betsy. Remember, her website is prettygirlpostcards.com. There is a contact form there. I will link to her website so you can go check out the website as well. And then her shop on Etsy, again, is Pretty Girl Postcards. I will link right back to that, and I'll have her email in there as well too. So if you just want to reach out directly to her. Betsy's also on Facebook and Instagram as Pretty Girl Postcards. I will have the links to both those URLs. On Twitter, it's Pretty Girl Post 2, and I will link to all that, so you don't have to bother writing this down. It will all be in the show notes for this episode. Betsy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your story and your humor. I encourage you to go check out what she's doing on Etsy. And, if you see a postcard you like that you think would be appropriate for, that person. I mean, some of them just jump out at you and you connect in your mind who exactly would really appreciate that card. Please do go and check out Pretty Girl Postcards on Etsy. And Betsy, thank you so much again for being my guest. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your having the forum for me to do this.
You're welcome. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back again next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.